So I know you guys were expecting Martin. In fact, we've decided to cancel Martin's talk because we've got far more important stuff to talk about, which is why we're so far behind our competition. So you don't know who I am. I'm your new boss, and we're cancelling Martin's talk. And unless we can come up with a way of getting past our competitors, who are like 100 times better than we are, we're cancelling the rest of the conference as well. And if we have to, and we can't come up with any ideas in the next 2 days, we're cancelling Christmas as well. Thank you for your time.
So not quite cancelling my talk. That's a bit of a feeling of what it's like when things are going incredibly badly. Liz set this up for me beautifully. Imagine your boss came on stage and absolutely seriously said that to you. Our competition is 100 times better. If we don't change, we die. 100 times better. And you are the only people that can work out how we can fix this. Now me, I'd say 100 times better. Boss, you're having a laugh. This is real. This was real for Toyota in the 40s. So before World War II, in the 30s, everybody accepted that the relative productivity between Japan and the United States was a factor of 9 or 10 to 1, with Germany in between. Generally accepted. And you can guess from the date that over the next 7 or 8 years, and particularly at the end, Japanese productivity took a bit of a downturn. Again, as Liz set up beautifully, you nuke people twice, you destroy all their industry, and life is not good. So, by the end of World War II, by 46, 47, the difference between American and Japanese productivity was about in the order of 100 to 1. And the chairman of Toyota said to his people, we have to catch up with the Americans. Serious challenge. 100 to 1. And you are the only people that can work out how. Fortunately, because they were in that state of chaos, they were open to learning new ways of doing it. So did it work for them? Well, let's have a look. The American government did a survey of, in car manufacturing, in productivity, between best-in-class American, Ford, best-in-class Japanese, Toyota. Number of hours it took to build a vehicle. Toyota, 47 hours. Ford, 113 hours. 2.5 times difference, roughly. And in cost terms, even more significant, even more stark contrast. 5 to 1 difference. And that's not because Japanese labor is or was cheap, quite the reverse. But if you're working for Toyota, you are building cars. There are not a lot of Toyota jobs that involve sitting in nice offices. So this was the point where the American government realized our car industry is dead, and the body is twitching a little, but it's effectively dead. And that has happened, getting to that state, to being 100 to 1 behind. What I'm going to talk to you about just now is how they did that. Now, who's read some stuff about Lean? Yeah, that's quite a lot. So we know a little about Kanban and pull systems and a whole range of Japanese terminology. All of that is not why Toyota made that difference. Described by the man himself. That didn't click, thank you, Taiichi Ono, who came up with most of this. who said all the stuff you know as lean, it's not important. The most important thing is all of it, they're just countermeasures to business problems that Toyota has had. And if we find better things, all of those things we'll throw away, happily. It's just a matter of finding ways to address the problems we have. And that's what this way of working is all about. So the thing that made Toyota jump that gap is that they have a problem-solving culture. No, sorry, they have an obsessive problem-solving culture. There's a great story about one of the first American graduates into Toyota. On his first day, okay, you come in, you think, oh, this is me, this is Toyota, scary. So you come in and you do the security thing, they give you a badge, all that kind of nice stuff, and show you to your desk. And there, waiting on your desk, is a problem to be solved, and a coach patiently waiting for you to turn up to help you through that. Now, the problem for this person, it was something small like rearranging the stationery cupboard, but it was a real problem. So Pavel was talking earlier about organizational culture. What does that behavior tell you about the organizational culture of Toyota? The one thing they want absolutely everybody to be obsessive about is finding and fixing problems. So, straw poll. Okay, using the same method Pavel did earlier. Everybody stand up. Okay, this is about the number of improvements that you have seen around you in the place you work in the last year. If you have seen more than 10 genuine improvements happen in the last year, sit down. Okay? If you've seen between 5 and 9 improvements, sit down. Between 1 and 4? Yeah, there are, okay. I used to work for a large global technology company, and I did this with, okay, this, you're in front of everybody, and there's a certain pressure to not admit that there weren't any improvements. So we did this with write-in surveys, okay, across a number of events over the course of a year. So we had about 1,000 responses. And this is what we found. Nearly half of the people that worked for this global technology company saw no improvements whatsoever around them in the previous year. That's not an obsessive problem-solving culture. So it's getting to that point where every day you're coming in thinking, what are the problems? How do we make it better? And there are a number of things that stop you from doing this. Okay? I'm not going to ask you to show of hands, but kind of nod along as you see some of these. So you come up with a great idea and you say, boss, I want to change the way we work. And the manager says, no, that's not how we work. We do it like this. We have a process. We follow the process. Okay, we've made an improvement. That's great, but we can't sustain it. Oh yeah, problem solving. We need a coach to help us do that. We need a guru. We need somebody from outside. We don't know how to make things better. Yeah, well, we're all really busy. We'd love to make things better, but we're under pressure to deliver. We want to do big change. Yeah, don't worry about the little stuff. Big change, low-hanging fruit that we can claim a nice return on investment for. We have to have a business case for every change. There's only some things that we can do. There's a very limited range of what we can change. A lot of problem solving, and I've heard this from time to time, yeah, that's a great theory. It's all theory. Doesn't address the reality of where we are. Vast majority of management issues are caused by solving the wrong problem, but solving it really well. And finally, you see the same problem appearing in lots of different guises. So you fix it over here, and it appears over there. So you want something that fixes or addresses a lot of these. So you'd want something that takes the people that would block change and brings them with you. That makes it easy for people to say, oh, that's a good idea, or alternatively, yeah, that's a dumb idea. But to be able to really understand what you're talking about. And that takes the knowledge of the people who are doing the work. That's the definition of a knowledge worker, right? That's Drucker's definition of a knowledge worker. Somebody who knows more about what they do than their boss does. So you want something that communicates the problem really well. You want to solve the right problem. You want to make sure those solutions stick. And you want to actually have a thinking process as opposed to oh, well, that seems like a good idea, but I haven't thought it through. So you want to solve the problem really well. And to make it really part of culture, you want to make sure that everybody does this. From the most junior person right the way up to the top boss takes part in this process. You don't want gurus, you want people who do the work. So you want to develop problem solvers that can then be better at solving problems. So A3 method does all of this when you do it well. And it uses that same cycle. Pavel, you were talking about this. He called it PDCA, I use PDSA. It's the same thing. It says, first, let's understand the problem really, really well. We all like to be solutions people. If we were a firing squad, most of the time we would go ready, fire, aim. We run from the problem space to the solution space far too quickly in most cases. So it says, let's understand the problem. Let's understand, why is this important? Why do we care about this thing rather than that thing? It says, we are here and we want to be there, or the other way around, depending on what you're measuring. And what's stopping us getting there? And understanding all of this a long time before you go near any solutions. And then you just set up a little experiment that says, right, well, let's try some stuff. Yeah, based on our analysis, this seems like a reasonable thing to do, but there's uncertainty. So it might work, it might not, we don't know until we try. Let's find out, did it work? If so, we do that. That's what we do now. Our experiment showed us a better way of working, so we replace what we do with what we tried. If not, it's not a failure. If not, we say, let's understand why. And that's where the learning takes place. If everything you predict happens, you don't learn anything. Now, a couple of deadly warnings first. Firstly, this is not a tool. This is not a template. Yes, there is a template, but it is not about the tool, not about the template. It's about a way of thinking. We're not fixing problems, we're fixing thinking. I found that image on Twitter and thought it expressed it really well. Secondly, yes, okay, there is a template, okay? And in the open spaces, and I really want to encourage you to join the open spaces I'll be running about it, we will give you the template. Use a pencil. You will be doing this iteratively, you will be making mistakes, you will be changing what you've done, and work through it progressively, thoughtfully, as opposed to saying, yeah, I'm just going to fill in the whole template. That rarely works. And thirdly, do not do this in a computer. Computers are where A3s go to die. Far better, write it, stick it on the wall, carry it around with you, take it to talk to people and say, this is what I think. What do you think? Have I got the right end of this? Have I misunderstood the reality completely? If you do it on PowerPoint, these things do not happen. Okay, so back to where we were. So if you have this simple thing, yeah, understand the problem, and then run some experiments to try some solutions out. You transfer it to one piece of paper. It kind of looks like this. And we're going to step through these very briefly. Much more in the open space. But one piece of paper. I like one piece of paper. I don't like thick reports. This I can talk somebody through in 5 minutes. A 30-page PowerPoint deck explaining problems, I can't do that. This, it means I have to be clear about the way I write things. And if I'm not clear, people will spot it. They will say, no, hang on, that logic doesn't make sense. Whereas if it's in a very deep PowerPoint deck, they have to think, well, you said something 5 pages ago, and I'm not sure what I remember it right. One piece of paper. Okay, so who does it? This is important. This is not a one-person sport. This is a team game. Well, it's a two-person game. Always two there are. Yeah, okay, I couldn't not put that up. It is absolutely a coached method because you cannot spot your own biases. You can't work out where your own problems are because you're too close to it. Plus, of course, there's some stuff around you don't understand it as well as other people. So it is deliberately about a problem solver and a coach. And who is the best person to be a coach? Yeah, I'm sorry. Professional coaches? Yeah, no, sorry, not you guys. I include me in that. It's the person who understands your context best. The person who should be owning the system in which you work. You can call those person a manager. So this is the opinion of Jim Womack, who has written a whole load of fantastic columns. URL is there. Very much about this kind of scenario. This is what managers should be doing. They should be saying, right, I understand the context well enough to identify some of the problems. I don't understand it well enough to provide the solutions. So we need the problem solver to be the person whose work is impacted. The manager isn't close enough to understand the facts. But the person who's doing the problem solving is too close to it. So you have to have a relationship between the two that work together to do this. What kind of problems? This is exactly what Liz was talking about. This is designed for continuous small problems. Okay? Because if you have a vision of we are here now, we'd like to be there, and you think, well, we're going that way. Great. Perfection looks like that. You can't get there in one go because of the J-curve of change. Because the bigger that jump, the longer it takes to get back up to where you were to start with, the worse it gets, the deeper the bottom is, and usually somewhere around here, the organization gets bored and you get fired. Not a good thing. So it says, well, okay, that's too big a jump, and there's a whole load of fuzziness in between that means we can't see what that big jump is. So why don't we just pick something that's a bit better? Yeah, you're walking in a fog. You can see a meter in front of you. You can't see 100 meters. Let's pick the meter in front and do a small change. Where do we want to be next? Small change. So to give you some examples of this, and if I had my speaker notes, I'd be better able, could see them, be better able to do this, because I haven't got all this in my memory. But this is one reason why Britain was a significant force in the Industrial Revolution, because British culture is about blokes in sheds who tinker with things. Not the huge innovations, but the little ideas. Just make it a bit better. So there was a whole set of innovations in producing machines that make threads. Yeah, from a single spinning wheel. Now this was the first innovation. This was the spinning jenny. 8 threads at once. Fantastic! 8 times productivity improvement. You know, if you went to your bosses and said, I can give you an 8 times productivity improvement, they'd jump at it. Yes? Yes. And some of us could even retire on that amount of innovation improvement. Fine, but it wasn't good enough. People kept on thinking, well, do you know, I've got this problem. So some of the things that started being done is, well, the wheel at the top, when it gets to the end, it hits a hard stop, which if you have a very fine thread, breaks. So if you have a way of slowing down the acceleration and deceleration of the wheel, then you can make finer threads, which are more valuable. And then people started saying, well, what if, okay, that's still quite manually operated. What if I managed to get some water power in that? Do you think that might be better? So you start seeing this kind of thing happening. And over time, innovation sits on top of innovation, till 100 years after the first one, you get this. One person can run 1,000 threads at once. Small innovation on small innovation on small innovation. So that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so we start with, why did you pick this problem, not that problem? And until you've got this right, there's no point in going on any further whatsoever. Why did you pick this problem? And making sure that all your stakeholders are with you on that. And that's the idea. It's a method of discussing, to be able to take this round everybody and say, I think this matters. What do you think? And taking their views into account and iterating over it again and again until you have something that enough of the organization are happy with. You may not be able to satisfy everybody. You kind of have a duty to go back to them and explain why, but it's building that community of change from the very start, that everybody's saying, yeah, we've got something that's important that we have to do something about. So I'm not going to go through the example because I haven't got time, but I'm happy to do that in the open space. So again, as I said, you want to define a problem as a gap between where we are now and where we want to be. And again, you take this round, all your stakeholders, all the people who do the actual work, to be able to say, I think this is where we are, using real data. I think it was Deming that said, in God we trust. Everybody else brings data, and using that to help define we're here, we want to be there. And then you do some analysis. So here's one way of doing analysis. It's called the 5 why method. You keep asking why. 5 times usually gets you there, until you get usually a process that isn't working very well. So if we fix that, you know you've got it right because you can step backwards up there, replacing why with therefore. Because we didn't have a checklist, therefore, we forgot to prepare a purchase order. Therefore, we forgot to, because therefore, we prepared the purchase order too late. Therefore, we didn't get all the signatures. Therefore, it was too late to actually get the food delivered. Therefore, the food didn't arrive in time. And there's another example. These slides I will tweet with the conference hashtag, these slides before the end of the day. Okay, so, zap through that. Again, we can look at the example when we have more time. Come on. Then we think about what are we going to do to address it. We come up with some ideas. And if you can't come up with half a dozen ideas, you're probably not thinking hard enough. But the beauty of this is you don't have to have an argument about my idea is better than your idea. We say, well, we can try them both. That's okay. And hey, let's try your idea first. And if it works, fantastic. That's what we do. But then we'll try my idea and see if it's even better. But it means you don't have to have a fight about who's the smartest person in the room. Little plan to say how we're going to get there. I mean, literally, 4 5-line plan. This doesn't have to be, Microsoft project, 500-line Gantt chart stuff. Who's going to do it? When are they going to do it? And that's on. How do we know if it'll work? So you want to have some measurement systems in place that can express it in the same form as you express the problem. So you know, did it work? Didn't it work? How well did it work? And then you say, finally, if it worked, how are we going to take this learning to the rest of the organization? Rather than having it something that's just here. That all what was the phrase Liz used? I can't remember. All the people that will want to block change, this is where you, right from the start, you start thinking about how we're going to get over that. So, does this method work? Absolutely, it works. So here's an example that I had. This was risks and issues that a team were tracking. We introduced a change about here that said, okay, our number of new issues dropped kind of like a stone after we introduced it. Okay, one example. Another one, this was around onboarding people to a process, to a team. It took weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. This was very painful because we were paying for all that time. The team I worked with, this was an offshore team in India, quite young guys. They worked out how to drop the time from coming in the door to being productive from 43 days to 23 days. And while they were doing it, they came up with some ideas that said, well, we think we can get it down another 4 days after that. So this is a Japanese manufacturing company. They've simplified their A3 template down to really, really simple stuff, before, after. But they have lightened that, and it works so well for them. This is the same organization. They have 8 improvement ideas per employee per month. Think about what that amount of innovation could do for your organization. Hugely powerful. Okay, how do we make this happen in an organization? Yes, I'm watching the time, Paul. Firstly, you have to learn to be the problem solver. You can't learn, it's really hard to learn this from a book. I learned it from a book and I suck at it. Every person I have coached to do this are better problem solvers than I am. Every single one of them. Because they learned it from me, not from a book. It's a hands-on method. And once you know how to do, then you can coach other people. Which has exactly the same dynamics. It's really hard to learn from a book. All the people I've coached to coach are better coaches than I am. And then you get a nice virtuous circle. And what you should end up with is chains of coaching pairs going up and down the organization. Kind of like that. Masters and apprentices, coaches and problem solvers. And the problem solvers are coaches to other people up and down the organization. So there are a whole bunch of resources, some reading, a whole load of useful books. That one's, go back one. The last two are really interesting. There is a very nice deck of cards that give you a lot of... Okay, it'll be in the slides. There's a nice deck of cards that give you a lot of coaching questions. There is an app as well. Where are we going to go next? There'll be an open space this afternoon. If you haven't done this before, you'll be learning to do. Think of real problems to bring with you. Okay, I've got a stack of A3 templates that we can do this with. If you have done this before as a problem solver, you'll be learning to coach. And you'll be coaching other people in the open space. Nice virtuous circle. And that is just about me. Thank you very much.